Have you heard of the Japanese art form kintsugi? Essentially, when pottery breaks, the artist takes all of the pieces and carefully puts them back together. But instead of hiding the cracks, they use lacquer and gold to highlight where it was broken. Wabi-sabi, there is beauty in imperfection. I used to fall apart and lay there broken, completely stuck in my sadness and misery. It took me a really long time to learn how to pick up the pieces of my own life. Now, spoiler alert, it's going to get a little heavy, but it all works out, I promise. Picture this. As a kid, I had it all planned out. I was going to be a professional singer, marry my high school sweetheart, Kevin, and have 5 kids. None of that worked out. I can't hold a tune. I didn't make it through high school. And at some point I realized I am not cut out for that many children. Right. So needless to say, my life went a different way. At 9 years old, I stood alone in my father's kitchen with a knife pressed to my wrist, contemplating taking my own life. I was too young to understand my own emotions, this jumbled mix of grief, loss, and unlovability. See, as a kid, I was really jealous of the loving relationship between my brother and stepmom. In contrast, my relationship with my own mom was complicated. How many of you can relate to a strained relationship with one of your parents? Okay, so I'm not alone. Well, my relationship with my mom was filled with broken promises, unanswered calls, and random visits to the motel she lived in. It's funny what bothers you and what doesn't as a kid. I didn't mind the filthy motels filled with the homeless, sex workers, and the occasional roach. Instead, it was the lack of time and consistency that broke my heart. Plus, she had this boyfriend that literally terrified me. When I tell you the man was always screaming, looking back, I can't even recall the sound of his real voice. So growing up, I held on to a lot. I had a lot of dark, repetitive thoughts. Why doesn't my mom love me? What did I do wrong? And at times, I don't want to live. Now, don't get me wrong, it wasn't all bad. I did ballet and ice skating and excelled in school. But under the surface, I was angry that my life wasn't going how it should. Have you ever been so focused on how you thought things should be that you couldn't accept how they were? That was me. So by the time I turned 16 and you throw in there a sexual assault, dropping out of high school, and dabbling in addiction, then top it off with the hormones of a teenage girl, I am a mess. And there's this one night that I remember so clearly. My head is throbbing, my eyes are swollen from crying, and I felt like I just couldn't take it anymore. Next thing I know, I'm in the emergency room waiting to be transferred to a mental institution. There I met a young woman who also attempted suicide. She spaced out in the middle of conversation, staring at the wall and struggling to finish her sentences. It turns out her suicide attempt left her with permanent brain damage and she would never be the same. That literally terrified me. But choosing not to die didn't mean that I knew how to live. And so my next few years were spent homeless and addicted, sleeping on buses and in coffee shops that were sweet enough to pretend that I wasn't there. I was broken. My life was in pieces. And then I found out I was pregnant. So imagine being at the lowest point in your life, having nothing to your name, and then finding out you're about to be a parent. I had so much fear and so many thoughts running through my head, the main one being, Am I going to bring a child into the life that I'm living? No. My child will not be raised in the instability and rejection I still felt from my own childhood, not to mention this mess I had created. And that thought sparked a fire in me that I never felt before, because during this time, there's this gap between where I am and where I want to be. Yeah, I know pain and challenges are universal, but I feel stuck. And I know I'm supposed to transcend this mess, but how? Now that I was pregnant, I finally realized I have been wasting every moment I spend focusing on the past. At this point, I am tired of whining, crying, and falling apart when things don't go my way. Tough times are a part of life, and pain comes to teach us something. So I decided to put my energy towards being the best mom I could be. And to do that, I tried to be a good human being. I really focused on growing emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. See, I've never been one to halfway do anything. When I was depressed, I tried to end it all. And now that I was choosing life, mediocre simply wouldn't do. I wanted passion and purpose in every part of my life. And let's just be real, I needed money. So I decided to enroll in a school of cosmetology. I loved doing hair, would have plenty of time with my daughter, and get to talk for hours. Seemed like a win to me. But cosmetology school pregnant is no small feat. So look, the elevator was always broken, so every day I'm climbing these 6 flights of stairs. Then I'm lugging this huge bag of supplies, then spending long days in hot, windowless rooms, giving my doll heads the most tragic haircuts. The whole time, feeling like a beached whale. Then once I graduated, I juggled working in the salon, often with a toddler at my feet, all while separating from her father. Life was crazy, chaotic, but fun. Because instead of complaining about my life, I was finally changing it. And now that I was pursuing my passion and purpose, radical accountability was the glue that held it all together. That meant taking full responsibility for everything that happened in my life. I stopped blaming my mom. Instead, I understood she was a human being with her own challenges. No, I wasn't in control as a child, but as an adult, I had created my circumstances when I chose to stay a victim. It finally clicked that life wasn't happening to me, it was happening through me. And it had simply been easier to point the finger at somebody else than it was to get myself together. What if we all started by focusing on the only thing we can control? Ourselves. Once I did that, everything changed. I made the commitment to stay sober and transform my life no matter what came my way. But hear me when I tell you, this was literally the hardest thing I have ever done. I mean, we all know what it's like to be hurt, heartbroken, or in crisis, and to hold yourselves accountable to fight through it. But doing that while suffering from depression and addiction is different. When you're addicted, it's like your brain is hijacked by the chemicals and you have no control. I wanted desperately to stop, but I felt like a prisoner to a substance. My willpower destroyed by the drugs. Existing felt difficult, and staying sober was a fight. The truth is, this was an internal battle that I was determined to win. So when I encountered a closed door, I learned how to kick down the walls. And that approach to life became my new normal. Think about it. In your darkest moments, what kept you holding on? For me, it was my belief that we are never beyond redemption. Strength comes from overcoming pain, and we can take all the broken pieces of ourselves and use them to create a masterpiece. That shift in mindset took me from homeless and addicted to opening my own salon at the age of 26, which was bringing in over 6 figures the first year. Thank you. and allowed my daughter to be with me all the time. Then I began going into the community, providing free haircuts to homeless men, women, and children. But one of the best parts, as I healed myself, my mom and I healed our relationship. She became my best friend and the first person I could call. Life was good. By my mid-30s, I was a happily married mother of 3, running my salon and traveling the world with my family. In fact, we had just purchased tickets for this big international trip when, boom, everything changed with the emergence of a worldwide pandemic. Like so many other people, the life I built was no longer secure. After 8 years of operation, my salon closed indefinitely. People I knew were dying, and I was scared. But I thought about this concept of kintsugi, and I decided to pick up the pieces of my life and use them to create something new. That led to the life-changing decision to write a book. See, at the time, my son was only 4, and if I didn't make it, I needed him to know who I was. I poured my heart into the pages, and after countless hours, edits, and revisions, my book was done. I told myself it would be a keepsake for my kids, but deep down, I knew I wanted to change at least one life. And before I knew it, people from as far as South Africa and Sweden were sharing how much they related to my story. And I had this moment where it literally all made sense. We don't survive just for ourselves. We survive for others, to inspire, encourage, and show them that if we can do it, so can they. Everything I cried over was now a means of connecting with other people as we collectively step into the next version of ourselves. No one is ever beyond redemption. Not me, not you, and not the hungry man picking through garbage on the street. We all have a purpose, and transcending our trials is the best testimony to that. Because what we have in common is that at some point, sorry, but we're all gonna break. Now, granted, there are different levels of breaking and different reasons why it happens, whether it's childhood abandonment, bankruptcy, or loss of a loved one. We are all going to go through something that hurts. And far too often, these events lead to massive depression or worse. According to the CDC, 1.2 million adults living in the United States attempted to take their own life in 2020 alone. This resulted in a death every 11 minutes from suicide. And this is a global issue. Statistics from the World Health Organization show us that over 700,000 lives are lost every single year to suicide. What does this mean? People are dying. Children are dying before they've even had a chance to live, and I get it because I tried. But now I'm here on a TEDx stage. If I could go from a depressed, homeless, addicted kid to the woman you're looking at today, nothing is impossible. Think back on the things you survived and the lessons you learned that forever changed the course of your life. For me, these 3 sum it all up. Number 1, always follow your passions. Ask yourself, are you doing what lights you up? Because let's be honest, it's hard to be happy when your days are filled with people, a job, or circumstances you don't enjoy. I fell in love with life when I filled it with the things that matter most to me, my family, my salon, and empowering other people. Number 2, take the time to figure out your purpose. At some point, most of us wonder why we were put on this earth. The first step is to identify your passions and then figure out how they can be used to make the world a better place. For example, I turned my passion for hair into doing hair for the homeless, not only pampering them externally, but really building them up internally. Later, I extended my passion for growth and transformation into coaching, writing, and helping people step into the next version of themselves. Use your passion to live out your purpose. And number 3, always take radical accountability. This is the key to success. It means understanding that you are in control of your life. Good or bad, you are responsible for how it turns out. And if you really want to make your dreams a reality, you're going to have to fight for what you want. Is there anything in your life that you need to change? And are you ready to do what it takes? Because if you do, you will be unstoppable. When life gets rough, let's remember kintsugi. Instead of falling apart and giving up, we get to become the artists of our own lives, taking all the broken pieces of ourselves and using them to create a masterpiece. You know, the most important thing that I learned on this crazy, beautiful journey through life is that it is never too late to change, because no one, and I mean absolutely no one, is ever beyond redemption. Thank you. Thanks.